Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Global Economy series being aired on Ismaili TV. I'm your host Danish Velji, and in today's episode, we will be focusing on Pakistan's economy front and center in light of various local, regional, and global developments that shape the future of our country. My guest this morning is a highly successful finance professional who also happens to be an acclaimed business leader. Whilst his claim to fame may be his stint as chairman of Pakistan Stock Exchange from 2018 to 2021, those who followed his career more closely will know him as head of Cyan Capital, the investment management arm of the Dawood Hercules Group, one of the country's most eminent business conglomerates. Prior to joining Cyan Capital, my guest this morning has also served in senior executive leadership roles within Allied Bank Limited Asset Management, as well as Pickwick Asset Management. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest today, Sulaiman Mehdi. Sulaiman, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here this morning. Sulaiman, right, let's get stuck in. January 2020, we were all going on living our jolly good lives. Come March 2020, you start hearing murmurs of a contagious flu that also happens to be lethal. By April 2020, we're all suddenly confined to our homes, and travel becomes a thing of the past. Businesses shut down. Governments then embark on aggressive stimulus packages, unprecedented ones at that, to try and revive the global economy with some degree of success. And in the second half of 2021, you see nascent but robust economic recovery across the globe. Then suddenly in 2022, war breaks out. What exactly is going on in our lives? Where are we at, and where's the global economy at today?
So, COVID has been an anomaly of the century. The world reacted to COVID through lockdowns, and hence we have seen demand shocks. As we've also seen negative oil prices. Again, these are historical phenomena. You've never seen negative oil spot prices. And what was the reaction globally by all the central banks was massive cut in the interest rates and stimulus package. Now, every force has equal and opposite reaction. So once the lockdown started lifting, the demand came in roaring, and hence we saw a supply shortage all across. Now, definitely that supply shortage led to a very high inflation rate. My view is that probably the central banks globally lagged a little behind in increasing the interest rate with the pace of the demand coming in. And hence, we are tied up today in a very high inflationary environment. Now, having said that, to be very specific in terms where are we headed, yes, so I'll just give you some statistics where today the Federal Reserve rates are hinging anywhere between 3.75% to 4%. Chances of going up to 5% is quite possible here. IMF that had predicted a GDP growth of 6% in 2021 and is predicting something like 3.2% in 22 is now saying we're going to hit 2.7% the next year. So definitely these are tough times. But the best part out of this entire situation is that actually now we are moving to a normal cycle, which wasn't there in terms of COVID, in terms of excessive rate cuts and stimulus package. It's slow, but we're getting back to normal.
Right. But having been through COVID, what do you see are some of the long-term trends that you see setting in as part of our daily lives or as part of our business activity going forward?
So probably three things that I like to touch upon here. The first and the foremost is technology, right? So technology is something that seems to be now a permanent feature in everybody's life. The second is media. Right. So the media has also kind of manifested in many ways. For example, providing voice to those people who would never have access to anything. And we've probably seen part of this during the Arab Springs also. Third is climate change. So this is something now I think is also there. And we probably United Nations has defined their sustainable development goals, which were defined in 2015 and are expected to be implemented by 2030. One thing that also I would like to touch upon that COVID has now created, and I feel is turning out to be a permanent feature, is there to last, is working from home. This is also a concept that there's going to be there. So these are probably 3-4 things that I feel have actually changed after COVID.
Right. You referred to media and media coverage just now 2 minutes ago. I remember distinctly when we speak of the 2008 financial crisis, the buzzword back then was recession. As part of the 2020 coronavirus coverage, we've now seen words such as shrinkflation and stagflation. So for a simpleton such as myself, and for the benefit of our viewers, can you please decode that, what these terms mean in simple terms for us?
So stagflation is a economic cycle that probably Pakistan is experiencing, right? That is a combination of muted growth or very slow growth and very high inflation. So that is what it is. And it's not specific to Pakistan. I think the entire world is going through the same phase. The interesting one is the shrinkflation. I define it in a way where a company does not increases its price directly, but kind of downsizes the packaging. So for example, if you're buying a packet of candy for 10 rupees, right, which used to earlier contain 5 candies. Now you still get it for 10 rupees, but now you get 4 candies from it. So this is called shrinkflation. It is also a kind of inflation, but in a different form.
Right. Coming back to the subject of interest rates that you briefly commented on just now, in light of successive interest rate hikes by the US Federal Reserve, what do you see as the impact of that on emerging economies such as Pakistan?
So, as I mentioned earlier, there is a monetary tightening going around, and what really happens with this monetary tightening, especially at the US level, demand for all US-based assets, current US currency-based assets, they just go up, and they also have a direct impact on all your developing countries' exchanges, right? And that in turn kinds of also add up to the overall inflation. Pakistan has seen massive devaluation in the last 12 months, but I think it's not just specific to Pakistan. We've seen the British pound devalued also. So it's been there. Other countries have also faced a similar situation. The good part about US interest rates going up is also that they kind of neutralizes all the bubbles, the asset bubbles, those are being created. And hence you see alternative optimization and kind of, downsizing and right sizing into alternative investments. So that is how I look at the overall impact of rising interest rates at the US front.
Right. And then when we do a microeconomic analysis of Pakistan's economy at this point in time, how do you see these rising interest rates affecting individuals and businesses, especially in light of the fact that Pakistan is currently enrolled in our 22nd IMF program?
So absolutely, these are very tough times, not only for Pakistan, but on the whole, globally. I think one needs to have faith in himself, hold the fort tight, and survive. One thing that I can strongly suggest is that defer all your discretionary expenses at this point in time. That is probably the need of the hour. Definitely, as I had mentioned earlier, the overall projections for the GDP growth are also on a decline, and Pakistan is not going to be any exception to it. It's like unfortunate that there's too much reliance of Pakistan on imports, and hence we keep on having a balance account issue every now and then. So being in the IMF program is good for Pakistan, kind of self-disciplines us with certain caveats on subsidies, amnesties and stuff like that. So I think we need to make sure that we in letter and spirit comply with all the requirements of IMF.
And to add to this, then Pakistan being in our 22nd IMF program simultaneously, when you also have a commodity super cycle around the world, as you pointed out, how does the idea of being in an IMF program then impact the economy for our country today?
So probably I'd like to quote a very one of the world's best economists here, Mr. Atif Mia, and he very well defined how an IMF program kind of affects an economy. So we as nation need to understand the purpose of IMF programs is probably to provide you shock absorbers in extraordinary situations like climate change, floods, international commodity spikes. No IMF program can change the attitude of the nation. So by that, what I mean is that Pakistan now needs to start thinking on lines how to increase their export. How are we supposed to make quality products in Pakistan which are exportable? So being in the IMF program, I think, is mandatory for Pakistan right now because it kind of disciplines us. It kind of prohibits us in terms of providing amnesties, excessive subsidies, because that's not how a nation can survive. We need to be competitive enough. To be competitive enough, you need to produce more than what you consume, and hence you export.
And that's completely understandable. And furthermore, if you look at Pakistan's economy, we're a country with per capita income of well below $2,000. So if we now focus our lens on a typical Pakistani family in this contractionary economic environment as well as high inflation climate, how can a typical Pakistani family control their expenses as well as mitigate the impact of aggressive inflation on necessities such as groceries, utilities, healthcare, education, and perhaps even housing costs?
So tough times for not only Pakistan but globally need to hold the fort. The income levels are going to take a little while till they can catch up with the inflation. So please, one piece of advice can be just defer all your discretionary expenses. Now, I would actually want to reverse this in terms that there is very little a household can actually do today in terms of the basic utilities, right? You need to eat, you need to feed your children, you need to send them to schools. But there's another way how the government can actually play a very important role. While being in an IMF program, IMF discourages subsidies. They don't like amnesties, but they're very fond of direct cash transfers, right? So the government needs to find out ways and means for effective and efficient direct cash transfers to the most vulnerable of the population. And the classic examples are the BISP and the SRs program. So this is something which is encouraged, and we need to ensure that we have this mechanism of making sure that the government can transfer money and support to the most vulnerable in the most transparent way.
Very recently, Maulana Hazir Imam has referred to the concept of exercising prudence as part of our daily lives. How do you think a typical Pakistani individual or a Pakistani family can exercise prudence in these difficult economic times?
So to me, prudence have many connotations, especially you're talking of difficult times, the way we are passing through right now. So to me, prudence is like working smart, working diligently. If you really want to get into a venture today, so just kind of very cautiously explore those ventures, right? And if you feel that you really want to get into new businesses, try and find good partners around those businesses, where they bring in the experience and the technical expertise, and you bring in the financial muscles, right? Prudence can be if you got 4 cars parked in your house and you're okay with 2, just sell the rest of the 2 if you don't need them. It's a very high interest rate environment, right? You can make certain more amount based on selling those assets, right? Go for alternate energy, like solar is one classic example. You can minimize your electricity bills by moving to the solar options, and so on and so forth. Wherever you feel there is room to optimize your investments in terms of returns, I think that is what prudence means today in tough times.
Right. And while if you were to stay on the subject of prudence, but let's move our focus onto now existing businesses, in particular SMEs. How would you suggest that small businesses or businesses in general could exercise prudence within their operations?
So probably at this point in time, the SME is one sector that's hurt the most. The reason being that their margins have been good, but today they're bound to kind of run their operations on debt, because you need money for working capital. So working capital is one part in any SME business. That's the critical. That's the life of the business. And with this kind of hike in the interest rate, the debt repayments have really gone high. As you've seen, a lot of non-performing portfolios of the banks, primarily emanating from the SME sector. My one advice to the SME sector would have been, and I'm a great supporter of this sector, because probably more than 40% of your total employment is created by the SME sector. Just try and adopt the modern ways of doing business. And for that, China is a classic example. It has actually driven from an SME to a large industrial land bank today. So just see and replicate what these guys have done in terms of technology advancement, in terms of better utilization of energy, non-wastage of water, stuff like that. So I think this is one way these SMEs can learn. But for that, I would put onus on the government to kind of create these awareness sessions for them, because they don't have the access to these kind of knowledge base where they can do their business in the modern ways.
Right. If we were to narrow our lens to the individual youth in Pakistan, what do you think our youth can do in terms of developing their skill sets, or in terms of the attitude they take to work, in order to try and make their skill sets as well as their profiles as marketable as possible to employers in this environment of economic contraction?
Have faith in yourself, believe in yourself, work hard. As I said earlier, technology is something you have to stay for long. Being a very younger population, probably 60% of the youth is somewhere between 35 and 40 years of age. So what they really need to now focus on specializing into areas like artificial intelligence, big data, ERP, software production, and all those areas. And with this concept of working from home, they can actually work for all the global technology giants while they're back home. So this is like doing a little bit extra compared to what they've been doing. And the best part is, someone is technology savvy, his acceptability at the workplace with his existing employer gets also higher. So this leads to his longevity at work also.
2022 has obviously been a difficult year for the global economy. In terms of Pakistan, we've seen unprecedented flooding in Pakistan, where at its peak, 35% of our land area was inundated with water. Lots of crops have been destroyed, as well as sizable amounts of livestock have perished as part of this flooding. What do you think is the impact of the above on the economic situation of Pakistan today?
Definitely, Pakistan being an agricultural nation, we're seriously hurt by this. And as we speak right now, we've received a total international pledge of $1 billion. And I'm also expecting that Pakistan is going to be the first one to receive the Global Shield financing, which is a G7 initiative for supporting those who are suffering through natural calamities and stuff like that. I would rather not talk about how bad it is, rather would talk about how to go about it in the future. So we need to understand and learn from the lessons we have seen in this flooding and try to do things a bit differently, because I feel this climate change is something perpetual and it's here to stay. So we need to think about stormwater drains. We need to think about, what are the crops those are, resilient to such flood situation, and we should be focusing on. We need to kind of talk about increasing our yields and stuff like that, and also kind of looking at areas, right? Those have not been affected by the flood. How about venturing into those areas this time, right? So these are certain things I think we need to explore very seriously as an agriculture nation and learn from our lessons.
And in terms of, if we were to now look at the bigger picture and talk about Pakistan's position within Asia, we've seen lots of other Asian players such as Vietnam, China, Bangladesh, a few others that come to mind, who've managed to grow economically, but not just achieve economic growth, but also manage to grow in a sustainable fashion. How can Pakistan also ensure that our economic growth going forward is sustainable in nature?
So, if you don't really want to, go out of the box and just follow their model today in terms of how they have achieved it, the first and the foremost, you can't achieve high growth, consistent investments in a political uncertain environment. So political certainty, I think, is something that's prime for the country, number one. Number two, what is very, very critical for Pakistan today is consistency of policy. If you keep on changing the goalpost in terms of the broader picture for any specific business, be it telecom, be it agriculture, be it fertilizer, be it banking, that becomes a showstopper for getting investment and for sustainable development. One very specific recommendation that I would like to make here in context to Pakistan, and I've made it at several forums before that we as a nation, as a government, we need to understand that it is not the responsibility of the state to provide jobs. It is the responsibility of the state to provide the ecosystem to the private sector for creating jobs. I think all the time I keep on hearing that probably, we're going to create jobs. It's not your job. It's the job of the private sector. Just provide that enabling environment, and hence you'll see a rollout effect on that. Lastly, but not the least, Pakistan needs privatization desperately. We can't afford to be burning 1,400 billion rupees every year. It's turned out to be more like gangrene. You need to ampute, right? There are many ways of doing it, but at least you need to stop the burn for the future. What has happened in the past. So I think we need privatization, especially on part of the state-owned enterprises, and try to kind of make the process very simpler for the privatization to go through.
You mentioned investments as part of your last answer. So when we talk about investments, one thing I wanted to touch upon was foreign direct investment coming into Pakistan. How do you think Pakistan can gear ourselves, as Pakistanis, we can gear ourselves up to try and attract long-term foreign direct investment into Pakistan?
So there are certain key ingredients for any nation to be able to attract FDI, right? The first and the foremost, political uncertainty is a non-starter. So you need to have political stability in the country. Then the second, what is important is consistency of policy. These are certain things that actually kind of, enables FDI in a country. Again, Pakistan has not been very successful for one of the reasons that in today's world, I think perception is more stronger than reality. So we kind of need to change our perception. We need to create that softened image of the country to be able to attract foreign direct investment in the country. So I think these are certain things, those are at the macro level that needs to be managed. And of course, I think our stock exchange can also play a very important role in bringing FDI in the form of investments coming into the equity markets, right? So we've seen certain schemes, those were announced in the past, your Russian digital account. So they've been able to attract investments in the country. It's just about putting a right product, right, with the macros in place, which is your political stability and consistency of policy. Because you see, unfortunately, what has really happened after every 4 to 5 years, we have seen a balance account issue, right? And whoever the government is there in power, not by choice, but they're compelled to go to the IMF program. Now, with this kind of a balance of payment crisis, every 4 to 5 years leads to massive devaluation. For FDI, you really need to make sure if someone putting in $1 today, right, if he gets devalued by 25-30%, he's not going to make money. If the business is going to return 20% and he's going to get devalued by 20%, it's a zero-sum game.
Right. So, I mean, while we're on the subject of investments and foreign direct investment, I wanted to make the most of your time spent as chairman of Pakistan Stock Exchange and put you on the spot, because if we didn't, it wouldn't be an interview in the Danish Hassan Velji style. So I just thought I'll ask you, what do you think are your top 5 sectors or businesses where you would invest in Pakistan today?
So first would be information technology and digitization. I think the alternate energy business is now quite ripe, like the solar energy business. This is something where we really need to invest big times. Mass transit is something I would look closely. After COVID, of course, healthcare, pharmaceutical, this is again a very exciting business to invest. And in terms of agriculture, I would look more at the logistics and the storage part of it, just to make sure, because I think 40-45% of our perishables, they're just destroyed because of non-availability of, ambient controlled warehousing. But these are certain areas I would really focus.
Various experts have suggested that for Pakistan to be able to grow sustainably and leverage our full potential, we need to be able to achieve a 15% export to GDP ratio, in addition to a 15% tax to GDP ratios, to ensure that we have no slippages on the current account side as well as on the fiscal side of things.
Probably, I think there's no rocket science to it. What we really need to look around is our neighboring countries, right? Both developing countries and developed nations. Of course, I would not relate to developed nations. They have got longer history than ours. We're a 70-year-old nation. We're still kind of, learning from our experiences, good or bad, both. So all we need to do is look at why people are willing to pay taxes in these regions and why not in Pakistan. So probably there is confidence within the government that whatever is being paid is also going into the right hands and is also being channelized back to support the person or the people who are paying that. So probably that is something we need to look into. And secondly, I don't think that Pakistani people at this point in time should start thinking that, the country is not doing enough in terms of, whatever taxes we are paying. I think it's still young. We need to kind of bear with it. I think a time will come when, the states will realize and start providing all those basic amenities and benefits. Those are to be provided for those who are paying taxes. Certain smaller privileges like, certain initiatives like, you just incentivize your larger taxpayers, by doing these award ceremonies, kind of, giving them free access to the airports, right? And certain appreciations can also help change.
You're talking about a feel-good factor.
Yeah, exactly. That confidence needs to be kind of managed between the taxpayer and the government.
Right.
We need to bridge that.
Right. You mentioned, you spoke of an improper implementation of the social contract between the state and her people at this point in time. So obviously that leads to fiscal slippages, and we've seen what happens when fiscal slippages eventually feed into current account deficits in terms of what's happened in Sri Lanka. So do you think that there's any possibility, God forbid, of Pakistan calling a default on her international obligations like Sri Lanka has?
So Pakistan going to be becoming another Sri Lanka. This talk was very rampant during July. I think Pakistan is much better situated today. As you're in the midst of an IMF program, IMF doesn't lend you money if they feel that you won't be able to repay your debts. I'm not saying it's a very hunky-dory situation. The margin for error is very small because today your import cover is something like 1.5 months. So yes, and hence you see these higher yields on your bonds and higher spreads on your CDS. Having said that, we just need to make sure that we pay back all our commercial debts on time, and we continue the IMF program. So honestly, I don't see Pakistan defaulting. And one thing that is very, very important at this point in time, and you must have heard it and seen it in many newspapers, that we need more bilateral support. So mobilizing the bilateral support, staying disciplined into the IMF program, and not defaulting on your commercial debt, right? So for example, on December 6th, we have $1 billion repayment. So you can't default on your bond. You cannot default on your coupons, right? You can always go for a bilateral loan to be restructured or deferred. But bond is something you have to pay.
Right.
So that's how it is.
Right. And no discussion on Pakistan's economy, of course, would ever be complete without a detailed conversation on agriculture. So, as you've probably read, only in the last week, the global population has now crossed 8 billion around the world. In a world of such high population numbers, this should represent a real opportunity for Pakistan to become the food basket, at least for the region, if not the world, through exporting agricultural products by virtue of embarking on agro-based industrialization. We have the largest natural irrigation network in the world. And despite this, unfortunately, we see ourselves in a position where 40% of Pakistani children today suffer from stunted growth. So it obviously has much to do with poor crop yields that we have in Pakistan. So what can be done both at the state level as well as by individual farmers to ensure that our crop yields increase substantially?
So I'll first answer your question. I'm going to identify few challenges that the sector faces today. The first and the foremost, parcels of land. So if you go to north of Punjab today, due to inheritance issues, per parcel average land size has gone below 10 acres. Now for a farmer having a 10-acre piece of land, it's very difficult to do mechanized farming or to kind of buy a tractor. Doesn't make sense, right? So this is probably one of the challenge. Second challenge is that the government also needs to understand what are the sectors, those are prime, right? So just to give you an example, the government provides a support price to sugarcane production, right? Sugarcane crop consumes probably more water than your cotton crop consumes, right? And if I talk about the cotton yields, so probably we have gone down from 14 million bales in 2015 to 7 million bales, which is down by 50%, right? In what, 6 years' time. Now we're providing support price to sugarcane, right? The cotton yields are going down because there is a perverse incentive for the farmer to grow sugarcane where more water is being consumed and the probability of exporting sugar is not there. So you see, you really need to incentivize the right attitude, right? So you're hurting your export also by bringing your yields down. So now you really need to import cotton to kind of convert them into textiles and then finished products. So these are certain problems that I see. Now, unfortunately, if I talk about Sindh and Central Punjab, where, we've got larger land holdings where efficiencies are possible. So the concept of corporate farming needs to be introduced. That's very, very important today. And we have not been doing it. So, talk about yield per hectare, probably we are one of the lowest in the entire region, right? So we haven't adopted the modern seed facilities, those are available. Another big challenge to the sector is the role of the middleman. So as I had talked earlier about these small farmers, why, there is no improvement in their quality of life? One has to answer that. The reason is that the Pakistani banking industry now needs to provide direct finance, direct access, accept them, as entrepreneurs. So this role of middleman, which actually provides seeds, fertilizer, tractors on rental to them, he takes away the entire profitability from these small farmers. If the same can be provided by banks or financial institutions directly to these small farmers, their welfare can really go high. And hence, these are certain things I feel that needs to be addressed ASAP for the agriculture sector to progress in the country.
Absolutely. And while we're on the subject of agriculture, of course, of direct relevance is the issue of climate change. As we are aware, Pakistan is one of the top 10 most climatically endangered countries in the world. How could Pakistan go about mitigating the impact of climate change, particularly and specifically when we talk about our agricultural heartlands in Sindh and Punjab?
So it's a far-fetched dream come true. What recently we've seen is that United Nations has defined It's sustainable development goals across all sectors, all industries, and those are to be implemented by 2030. So I think there is a lot that needs to be done when it comes to agriculture in terms of, you need to have these stormwater drains. You should be able to recycle the same water. We need to now look at the current flood situation in Pakistan and ask questions, right? Ask questions that which crops survive this flood? Do we really need to reconsider moving towards growing orchards while growing these crops between them? So I think Pakistan, after like 1/3 of our total land area being flooded, we've got many experiences this time, and now we need to move on in terms of learning from this experience and implementing that. How are we going to survive during these climate changes? Because I think they're going to be a perpetual feature, unfortunately.
Right. My final question to you would be around the subject of regional connectivity. I think it's a no-brainer that Pakistan occupies an extremely important geostrategic position. How can we leverage this location of ours, this invaluable location of ours, to try and exploit any and all economic opportunities by virtue of conducting regional trade?
So I think there is just tremendous potential for regional trade, as you mentioned, looking at our location. One example can be Pakistan being an energy deficient country. Our energy cost could just go down significantly if we can have an energy trade with Iran today. But unfortunately, due to UN sanctions, we're not able to do that. South Asian republics, probably I think we have trade with Afghanistan, but the security situation in Afghanistan also needs to be managed, controlled for us to be able to access larger volumes. I mentioned earlier that, if we are able to export our agri-producers to China, that can be a game changer for us. But for that, you really need to bring in the technical expertise, the seeds, how to increase the yield per hectare from them. And they being the largest population today, individually, can be your largest consumer for agri-producers. So these are certain opportunities that I can think of we should definitely explore.
Right. With that, Sulaiman, all that remains for me to do is to thank you for your appearance today, because unfortunately we've run out of time. This was extremely insightful. I think we could have kept going for another 1 hour, but perhaps we'll have to invite you another time to resume this discussion. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us.
Thank you for having me over.
Thank you so much to all our viewers for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this thoroughly insightful session with Sulaiman, and have yourself a nice weekend. We look forward to seeing you next time. Allah Hafiz.